From what we saw with the survey results yesterday, race is still very much an important aspect of what millennials think and feel. Millennial blacks are 92% likely to support Obama in the upcoming election, whereas white millennials are a bit more split. So race is factoring with ideology. It's really important that we don't say that we are a colorblind society or we are colorblind, because from what we saw, it is very important. Although we say we are post-racial, we really aren't.
And along with race too, in the survey, we saw a lot of divisions kind of along religious lines as well. I think that the issues of race and religion are kind of intertwined in both something that definitely have to be acknowledged in conversation. I think sometimes both race and religion are kind of taboo things, like you don't want to offend anyone, but both of them are things that need to be brought to light and kind of engaged in conversation like we've been doing here this week.
Something that was really interesting for me was yesterday Xenia talked about affirmative action and how she doesn't think that as a nation we're ready to let go of that. From what we've heard from a lot of not only the Millennial Values Fellows but also millennials from the survey, we think that there's still a lot of inequality in the world, and we think the government should have a bigger role in stopping inequality.
You and I actually had a conversation about this earlier this week of how, the government can legislate to end discrimination or to end segregation, but there's a difference between de jure and de facto,
Right.
So you can have mandated integration and affirmative action, but until people's personal minds are changed about the issues, you really haven't had a success. People's prejudices and fears aren't going to go away by a legal mandate. It takes something deeper and more personal. Millennials, kind of what defines our generation is our open-mindedness and our tolerance, and I think that kind of is displayed in our religious identifications. You see this growing move towards religious unaffiliation, which doesn't necessarily mean atheism, although that is also a growing movement. A quarter of millennials, so 1 in 4, are religiously unaffiliated, and that doesn't, like I said, necessarily mean atheist, but this idea that you don't have to be tied down to a certain doctrine or dogma, because I think our generation has seen a lot of kind of hypocrisy and narrow-mindedness from religion. Even the majority of millennial Christians see Christianity as anti-gay and judgmental.
I would say I have Christian values. A lot of Americans, even though they necessarily wouldn't say they're Christian, would identify that they were raised with Christian values. So I have my beliefs on how I think the world should work, but I also don't think that just because I believe something, I should exclude certain people from getting rights. But I also don't think it's fair for the public to impose on politicians that they should not be allowed to voice their religious concerns and bring it to the public sphere and say, this is what I believe religiously, but I'm not going to impose my beliefs through laws on what I think you should do. And I'm not sure if we've done a good job. So how do you think we can bridge this gap?
I think that's something that the millennial generation, will have to kind of deal with. We've been talking a lot about who are we? We know who we're not, but who are we? Are we going to talk about these issues and bring them out in the open and make them part of the dialogue, or suppress them or try to ignore them? And I think that's a big question that our generation is going to have to face.
And I think from what we saw with the survey results, suppressing them isn't really working, because they're coming out in the results with race and religion and aspects of reverse discrimination that a lot of white millennials are feeling. But I think the best way to deal with race and religion that you mentioned are so taboo, are so controversial, is that we have to be authentic, like Mr. Shriver mentioned last night to us, and that is we have to let everyone know that this is going on. There are very big disparities with race in our country, and we can't just throw it under the rug and act like they don't exist. But I think if we're authentic and we see both sides of the arguments with race or religion, and we are respectful to each other's perspectives, that we'll be able as a generation to solve these problems.